I'd like to open the meeting of the steering committee. Appreciate everybody being here and on time. And in this facility, we had a little problem over the courthouse with a water line that ruptured and made quite a mess over there. My understanding, it was an old line that had been capped off inside the walls. It wasn't, you know, something where somebody could have got to it and kicked it to vandalize it. It just happened, and it's quite a mess. Mayor, do you want to elaborate on that any more than that, or?
Well, it pretty much flooded from almost in between the back stairwell and the door going into Kim Taylor's former office. Everything from there back to the back door was flooded, and it was actually running out the back door into the street. And that's how we found out about it. Somebody saw it, called the Public Works Department. We've had a contractor out today and looked at it. We had already contacted the insurance company, and they told us have somebody come out and look at it, give us an estimate to repair it. We had one this morning. I think Servpro is supposed to come out tomorrow. There's another one we're going to have to look at it. We're going to try to get 3 different quotes on it. And as far as I know, Cliff said the first one went out there and looked at it today. They looked at it together, and he said it's worse than he initially thought it was. Because where it came out, got under that linoleum, now it's underneath that. And if you, not too long after it happened, they got it all dried up. If you walk back through there, water come up through the cracks. So once they peeled it all back, you can still feel down there, and there's actually an older sheet of some linoleum that's under that, so it's even gotten under that, so we don't know how bad it is right now, but it's worse than they thought initially.
No basement flooding?
Oh, it went in the basement, it went out the back door, it went, like I said, from about where Kim Taylor's office is back, it went a little bit into the former trustee's office and a little bit into that second door for the Register of Deeds office. Not real bad, but it did get in there a little bit. But everything kind of in that hallway from in between Kim Taylor's office and that back stairway back, it was just standing water.
Don't think it damaged anything in the base.
That's what
but there's really nothing down there except the boiler system, and it would have been high enough up that it probably would have affected it. But I'm sure they'll check that out as well.
Didn't mess up any windows, did it?
Not yet. First item of business here is our minutes from the last meeting. They're there with you. Had time to look them over. I found one thing over on page 2. If you look down under C, where it says Mayor Chambers, it says the state has a Tennessee steering committee, and it just needs to say the state of the Tennessee Downtown Steering Committee. That was the Downtown Steering Committee, and need to add downtown to it in the permanent record so that it's not confused with this one.
And that's actually a county committee. Each county has to establish a steering committee, but the program is called Tennessee Downtowns, but each county has their own steering committee, and that's what that would be. We just call it Tennessee Downtown Steering Committee.
Move to add that correction and approve the minutes.
Have a motion to approve the minutes of that correction. See any other corrections? Have a second from Mr. Nolan. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is done. Everybody would just add that one word there between Tennessee and steering, where it says reflect downtown. We'll make sure that the permanent record has that change to it as well. I believe we have all of our members present. I don't think we need to call a roll. Are we missing anyone? Okay, I thought we had everyone. Committee assignments, we talked about last month. Anybody wanted to change from the committees they're on to another one, just please let me know. If you ask to be on one, tell me which one you don't want to be on, because it's going to be a one-for-one type thing. And so far, I've not had anybody at all tell me they want to change any committees. So what I'm going to present at the end of the month right now will be as is, because no one's asked to change. If somebody does, we'll make that correction at that point in time. Also, it is to be done before the end of the year, not necessarily next month or October, but before the end of the year, the committee should meet and elect or re-elect its officers. That is the chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. You can, of course, elect the same people you have, or if you feel like there's a need to have a change, you could have a change as well. But sometime before the end of the year, have a meeting and make that part of your agenda. One thing I wanted to remind everyone of, we've had real good response on people getting the minutes to the meetings in, and I appreciate everybody doing that, and I'd like to commend everybody for doing that. We need to try to get them in within a week of the meeting. Where we are a little lax with some of the committees and some of the chairmen is the agenda. You need to have an agenda for your meeting. It needs to be submitted to the mayor's office at least 2-3 days prior to the meeting so that it can be publicized at least on the website as to what it's going to be. My suggestion to you, Chairman, I'm not telling you to do this, it's a suggestion, is that when you call the meeting, when you go in and say, I want to have a meeting on September 15th, that you know then why you're having a meeting and you have the agenda ready at that time and say, this is what we're going to be meeting on, what's the date? And then that will take care of it. So if you can train yourself, and that's what I've been trying to do, is because you know, you wouldn't be calling a meeting if you didn't have a reason. So just go ahead and write that reason down so that we know what the reason for it is. So we can be in compliance with our rules. And there again, we're all committed to trying to be a lot more transparent and to allow the public to have more access to what we're doing. And it's not fair to them to just announce a meeting when they don't even know what the meeting is about. So I just want to caution everybody on that. Please do that. Any questions about that? Any comments from anyone? Okay, we'll move on down. Reports from other boards, committees, commissions. Fire Hydrant Project Status, we've talked about this a little bit in times past. Tommy's here, I'm sure he can answer questions about it. We had identified, I'll just jump into it, and you can, either one of y'all, you're on the water board too, interrupt me, but we had identified 20 fire hydrants that were in need of repair or replacement. I believe we're 17 now of those have been taken care of.
15 of them have been
15?
either replaced or repaired.
Okay. And the others are waiting on where we have to put new valves in the ground on the lines before they can even be worked on. So as soon as we can arrange to do that, we'll have those done. I think we did identify one more that had broken off that nobody knew about, Tommy.
And we replaced each one of those 15 we replaced. New.
So that is progressing very, very well. Tommy and his guys really need to be thanked and commended for getting on that and getting it done. And we do appreciate it, and it will mean a lot. They've also been doing flow testing on all the fire hydrants and to try to get that data up to date for when we do our next ISO rating. Tommy, you want to add anything to that?
Just like about 35 hydrants in the city limits, or below city limits, being finished with the 200 we were working toward.
We've got 200 fire hydrants in the system, and we have identified some of them go back, they're as old as they were put in the 1950s. You know, I mean, they've been there 70 years, and the water board is trying to work toward a plan. I think the last thing, and correct me if I'm not wrong, we were going to look at trying to do an average of about 3 a month over the next couple of years to try to upgrade the oldest ones and the ones that there are some that we can't get tools and things to work on, but we're going to, instead of trying to patch these things up, to absolutely try to replace them and get these updated.
Yeah, because right now we've got, is it 6 or 7 different manufactured hydrants up there? 7?
Some of them are out there, I call them oddball, they don't exist anymore.
We're actually trying to get down when we got 1 or 2 manufacturers, that way our set of tools will be able to do all of the hydrants, whereas right now, as Mr. Jewell said, we've got some we don't have, can't even get the tools for them anymore. So.
What's the main ones you have?
Yeah, mostly Mueller, and they're older, some are back in the 50s, 60s. About 50 of them are below 1985. And there's some older brands, older than the oddball brands are older too, they're older than that.
You replacing the American Darling or?
No, well, we're putting American Darling as the one we're going to, the newer
That's
version.
what I'm talking about, that's what you're replacing with.
They're easy to, you can use most the ratchet, socket and ratchet, take them apart. One tool to take the style body out and you're done. Pretty simple. Most modern hydrants are pretty simple to fix.
But the water department is addressing this, and I know you've had a lot of questions, there's been a lot of water interruptions, I'm sure, where they're working on these hydrants and they've had lines down day after day. People, I know I've had calls about it and I've seen a lot of Facebook posts about it, but it's just because they're trying to work on it and get this addressed. Mr. Ford.
You mentioned flow testing. Are you color coding as you go through time?
You see a lot of them, almost all of them, we flow tested except for the last batch, the last 10 or so have been painted. We try to get them, as soon as we do the flow test, go back and paint them, the tops of them. We'll go back and get them again and put another coat on them. And we may go ahead and paint them red one more time, clean them up, paint them one more time red.
So that's where we're at with that project. It's proceeding along very, very well, and I think the water board is committed to trying to get this taken care of and updated. Have down here, while we're on that subject of the fire hydrants and things, I did have a conversation today, finally, with Chief West, Gary West, about the sprinkler coming in, bringing the trailer for demonstration and all of that. He is supposed to call me back tomorrow with 3 dates toward the end of this month. I told him that we felt like we could get our best crowd there on a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon. Not to do it during the week, during the daytime, because so many commissioners work that I wouldn't be able to get the commissioners there. So we're either going to look at a late afternoon, 5, 6 o'clock, or a Saturday or Sunday afternoon on the demonstration. Preferably, possibly a Saturday. But they're checking, he's having to coordinate 3, 4, 5 different people to come to give this presentation. So it's hard to juggle all those people and get us firmed out. Mr. Ferguson?
Just a thought, why not do it right before a work session?
I threw that date at him on Monday, that Monday night, and that was one of the dates, the possible dates that I told him. I had given him the 15th because we had a code and zoning meeting that night, and I'd given him the 24th as far as weekday nights that probably wouldn't conflict with anything right now. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to give up their weekends, but as far as trying to be able to find a time that people weren't at work, that seems to be, and you're talking about a couple hours probably.
What's the time frame?
Yeah, a couple hours. And he said he could either do presentation to a group at a different night, different time than the actual demonstration, the live burn, or we could do it before it, directly after it, but he's going to try to get us some dates together. So that's where I'm at on that. I apologize for not being able to give you a date tonight, but hopefully by tomorrow we'll have that. At least some choices to kind of throw out at everybody. As soon as I know, I'll let you know. But that's where we're at on that issue. If you've got questions that you really want them to address, if you'd email me those, he said go ahead and get a list of questions together so that they can be prepared to have, data and statistics or whatnot to answer those questions. Okay. All right. We'll move on to things to be sent to committees. You've got your fund balance summary there. If you've had a chance to look it over. This is not final, because it's not audited. This is the final unaudited, I guess you'd say, fund balance summary, because that seems to always be a topic of discussion as to where are we with fund balance. versus where we were last year. So this is where we wound up, where you see the third category down that's in green and pink, or fourth line down, I guess you'd say. That would be the net change from last year's fund balance. If you look at them all together, all total, we were about $11,452 less money in fund balance than the year before. So we went through last year and basically, for all practical purposes, wound up even. But it is a slight decrease overall of $11,000. You can see which figures where the big hit was, or big loss was. One was on education debt service. The wheel tax didn't come in quite as much as it had the year before. Don't know how much COVID had to do with that in the last few months, but I'm sure it did affect it. And that's where the big loss was. Went ahead and tried to break down for you the encumbered balances as far as things that were restricted or committed, so that you could look and have a better idea that not that cold dollar we can go out and spend. Some of it's already committed to something, or something's restricted as to what it can be used for. Have any questions about that? Mayor, do you have anything to add on that?
I'll just caution everybody, these are the final numbers we got when Amy closed out the books. However, once we go through the audit, and whatever the auditors come up with will be the actual final number. So these are still subject to change going through the audit process.
Any comments, any questions? I'm pleased. I don't mind saying I'm pleased with it. What we've been facing the last 6 months, I'm very pleased.
I will comment on the education debt service, the wheel tax not coming in. We got to remember Governor Lee suspended coming in to get your license plates renewed for a few months, so that we think that's probably what set it off. We may see a flux coming in, once that has to go into effect. You got to get your tags renewed. We'll probably see a big spike in revenue by that time.
So we're not seeing that yet?
Not yet. I mean, we are seeing some come in, but not to the extent, to make up for all those all in like 1 or 2 weeks. No, we're not seeing yet, and it'll trickle over probably over a few months.
That ended in what, July? Governor Lee's extension?
So, I mean, your revenues come in about a month or so behind, so sometime this month we'll know what it was then, but you don't really see it reflected, that avalanche in October, through August yet.
This unassigned figure down here at $3.5 million, that's actually what we've got to deal with right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
All this other added up brings you to 3.926.
Yes. That's correct. Total in all these funds, $7,333,342. But that's all of them, including the encumbered, including the restricted, including the ones like county roads. So total dollars, that's where we're going to go. Sounds like a lot of money, but when you actually start breaking it down, what you can use, you can't use, and how you can use it, it's not quite as much as it appears to be, I guess, is the way to do it. Any questions? Everybody good with that? Did that help you having those figures?
Well, if it helps, I'm just glad to know it.
Well, it's good information. I mean, somebody asks you, we've got the information to be able to answer them, and when we're going forward trying to make decisions, we have this, as soon as we have an audited figure, we'll let you know as soon as that happens. Got several budget amendments for this month. I think most of them are pretty self-explanatory. If you look at the sheets, most of them are dealing with the CARES Act grant funding and trying to set up a line item category for that to be spent. That's the first one in the library, that BA 10102, that's what it is. Mayor, do you need to speak any more on that?
If you just look where it says purpose, what it is, as Mr. Jewell said, this is CARES Act money is directed to a specific purpose. I think this comes from the Tennessee State Library and Archives. So we're showing revenue coming in. We had to code it for that because that's what comptroller requires for us to keep track of the different CARES Act or whatever money we got coming in dealing with COVID. And then we show there the two expenditure sides. So if you see there, it says it's going to be used for PPE items and to purchase with conferencing equipment.
Any questions about it? Okay. Next one's BA 10103R. This is the request, $2,970 on fire department equipment. We had had a donation that we received, Enbridge donation last year. That was not used in that time period. It was put into committed funds for the fire department, and this is so that those funds can be used to purchase those air bottles. This is something we've discussed many times in times past. We're just trying to get to the proper line item in the budget. Any questions about it?
How many bottles will that buy?
3. I think it's what Mr. Buckmaster told me they did, would fund 3 bottles, and then we've got $40,000 we put in the budget to buy some other bottles. Because they got some that are aging out, they're supposed to not be used beyond 5 years, so I think we've got 8 or 9 that are aging out, so we're going to replace those.
Well, are they gonna start replacing every year, so you all use it?
Well, like I said, they're gonna use them for 5 years, so we'll be, about at the time they're aging out, we're gonna start replacing them. Like I said, I think they bought a bunch of bulk about 5 years ago, about 8 or 9, so they're going ahead and replace those.
I believe the ones that were purchased, that big group was part of the grant at that time, and it's just time to replace. Okay. Any other questions about that? All right, VA 10104, fire department employee. This one probably is going to be a little harder to explain, but I'll attempt to do it, and Mayor, jump in if I misspeak. We have a new hire in the Public Works Department that's also a member of the Volunteer Fire Department. According to our personnel policy, if they're scheduled to work, the fire department will cover the cost of their wages instead of the Public Works Department. It's kind of a transfer of funds. There was nothing set up in the fire department budget to cover that happening because there was nobody at that time that it would even apply to.
Yeah, there hasn't been anybody that would meet that requirement under the personnel policy for at least the last 2 budget years. So that's why it wasn't included. Like I said, this is a recent hire to the fire department, and personnel policy says that if there's a fire and they're called out, they still get their rate like they would be working for the normal department, but it's paid for out of the fire department's fund, so we got to amend our budget to reflect that.
So it's either pay them here or pay them there, it's just to get the accounting according to, try to abide by the policy. Any questions? It's a little hard to understand if you're not familiar with it. I questioned it myself. I said, what does it matter? You know, it's come out of different pockets, same pair of britches, but to try to keep the accounting correct. Any questions? Okay. And DA 10105, c.Resolutions Center, $22,500. There again, this is CARES Act funding, and this will be for them to purchase items for senior citizens. It's allowed under the CARES Act, and just got to show it in the budget. Any questions about it? No. Basically a pass-through. Last one, BA 10106FB. This is a request to amend budget for clerical personnel in the Office of Building Inspection and Codes. This position will help with paperwork, scheduling, and other clerical work. Requesting a position be hired at approximately $13 an hour for 24 to 25 hours a week. Sam's here, he can answer questions about this. This came through, I assume, from his office and the mayor.
We've been asking, this is usually a budget line item during budget time. We're only a month or two into the budget. Why is this just now coming up? Because I've heard this for a long time about the building inspector needing assistance. Why is this just not coming before us? Why was this not done during budget time?
We did discuss it during budget times, and I told the commission that based on the guidance I was getting from the state, not try to cut out any unnecessary expenditures at that time. I said, I don't know where we're gonna land budget-wise, so I pulled it out. Now we've come in, we have 3 major developments coming on, and he's getting more codes requests and all this kind of stuff. His office is starting to get really flooded for one person. I've had citizens complaining about having to wait for services. So, given that we landed better on our last fiscal year, we did get some money from the state this year, $700,000 to help cover expenditures. Rural counties do not seem to be getting hit as hard as a result of COVID as the urban ones do, because a lot of the rural counties didn't have a lot of your tourism revenue, like hotel taxes and these other things coming in. So we're not seeing a big hit like some of these other ones did. So we think we're better in a financial position, and that office, the building permits and everything is going to be bringing in more revenue, because at our planning commission, there's at least 2 or 3 major developments that are going to be coming on that are going to generate significant building permits. So to keep up with the record keeping and all that stuff, and make sure we can still provide the inspections and codes enforcement and whatnot, Mr. Edwards and I spoke, and we think at this time it's better to bring on a part-time assistant to see how that works out. If COVID has a bigger hit later in the year and we see it fall off, we can always terminate this position if necessary. But at this time, with the backup for services, we thought it would be better to go ahead and put this forward. And I told Mr. Edwards during budget time that we would come back later in the year, see where we stood, and if we think it's still an urgent need and there's no fall off as far as construction going in the county, that I would bring it to the commission. So, as I said, we have not seen a drop off in our building. We've actually seen an increase. And so, and based on those factors, we brought it to the commission to see if we can get that position put in place.
Well, it's not the question of whether he needed it or not. I've always understood that he needed the assistance. It's just the fact of the matter that knowing that our economy with the real estate market is continuing to move upwards, and Mr. Hartsman seconded me on this one, and knowing that we have a county general ending fund balance in between 3.9 million and 3.5 million, depending on how you want to look at appropriated funds, $16,900 probably would not affect our bottom line anyway. It would have been preferred to have had this tackled, in my opinion, during budget time instead of afterwards, but that's just not going on. I think he needs the person.
I'll say, I think if we weren't facing COVID and uncertainty of it would have been a part of it. That, I don't know how to answer it any better than that.
Yeah.
If you remember, once we revised, after we got a little bit further on in the year after COVID hit, and we revised our numbers, we were looking at a $500,000 loss as far as our fund balance. Well, now we're sitting here and it's not, what, 90-something thousand? An increase of $37,855. So based on what we've been told earlier in the year, and looking at the decreased revenue we were projecting during the budget process, we figured we'd try to cut in, keep out any unnecessary expenditures of things that we could, not fund. And at that time, you had all these people saying, well, the housing market's getting ready to take a dive, it's getting ready to take a dive, and the state telling you, don't fund anything new. Try to just cut back and keep your quid pro quo. Now we're a little bit further in the year. Our building is actually going up. I don't know what other places are seeing, but we're going up. And that office is getting extremely busy. And like I said, I've received several complaints about needing services and getting that done, getting inspections done and codes enforcement. And at this time, we just think we're sitting in a better financial position than we were a few months ago to look at it. And so we brought it forward to the commission now.
Got one. Mr. Ford.
It might very well bring us in more money.
It may, like I
In
said,
order to keep up with the flow, it's probably going to be necessary for it.
well, we have basically an apartment complex coming in, a planning commission. We have another development, it's what, 30-something houses, Mr. Edwards?
It'll be right at 30. We've got the potential of if they were built this year, which I doubt they will be, but they're with potential right now already approved of another 100 and something houses, and then 66 apartments, I think is what it was, that's coming, and then we got another roughly 50 apartments coming after that.
The housing market in this area is still, has been.
Yes, I agree with what Mr. Ford just said. We may be losing money by not always having somebody staff there. Didn't this just one office bring in about $300,000 to the county each year? I mean, that's amazing for one individual.
Well, if you
Well,
count-
no, we had one year that I was in the office, we had over $500,000. So, yes, the money is generated in that office, and it's supposed to be used for that office. It's not supposed to be used to supplement the county. So, this has been needed for a long time, and we just keep kicking the can down the.
I remember back a long time ago we discussed it.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned something.
I just clarity, next, I'm sorry.
I just have a question on the $13 an hour, when we've got full-time regular employees not making that.
The next administrative assistant's making $13.50 an hour. So this will be the lowest paid administrative assistant in the county.
Well, what about full-time employees?
They is full-time. They'll be the only part-time administrative assistant. Excuse me, there may be one in the register of deeds, but I think she may be going full-time, and she's the one that's at $13.50.
Most all the other help, clerical help is full-time.
You gotta take into account the amount of stuff this person's gonna be doing is substantial, so.
Mr. Ferguson.
You brought up a point I wanted to clarify here. So the monies that come in, the revenues that come in for that particular department, is that sitting in their budget at the end of the year? Because you said
No, it goes into the general
it
budget.
goes into the general fund, but you also mentioned that the funds that go into the general fund, are they allocated just for that department when time comes to spend
No.
it? They're not?
No,
Okay.
never have been.
What's generated by that office of being your building permits and your impact fees.
Yeah.
And right now, your impact fees is supplementing your sheriff's department because it is not a revenue generating department, and it is a substantial amount of money. It's over $1 million. So that's going to supplement your sheriff's department, but as far as building permits, I think it brings in around $150,000, and with this increase, it's only gonna be about $101,000 budget total. And Mr. Edwards has offered, and he actually submitted something today, that he's willing to go down to $22 an hour and use that savings to help pay for this administrative assistant.
And I don't want him to have to do
No.
it, but you may. One thing I wanted, Sam, is this going to allow you to keep the office open more, the office hours?
So this assistant is gonna open the door at 8 o'clock and work until 12. The door will close at 12 o'clock, and they'll have from 12 to 1 to finish up whatever paperwork they were doing. So at 12 o'clock, the door will close, but the office will be open from 8 to 12 for that assistant to help anybody that needs to speak in person or has questions or any of that stuff. So they'll be there Monday through Friday, 8 to 12.
So you're not planning on keeping the office open any longer than you are now?
Right now, it's closed. So I do everything over the internet and over the phone.
So you're saying you don't have the office open at all?
Not at the moment. I haven't had time for it. We moved everything online, all the permits are online, so everything gets submitted online. So that gives me more time right now to get back to doing some of the things I should be doing these inspections properly, going out and doing some of the complaints that are being submitted in, actually staying in the office, fixing a lot of paperwork. I've got a lot of the permits scanned in, I put them all on hard drives, so we have hard copies and digital copies. There's a lot of things that the office needs to work on, fixing errors. The thing that scares me most about the office is the amount of legality that's in that office is scary. If the paperwork's not done properly, the way the banks and the insurance companies get now, I get calls every day asking for copies of inspections and permits, and if I pull out a folder from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and we don't have proper documentation, we're in trouble. So I've had Sharon Level for 2-3 different situations be in the office, digging through paperwork, because we didn't have proper documentation, we had to find something, we couldn't. That sets us up for legality issues. We can get sued for not having proper documentation. So getting this assistant in there, and we can focus on doing everything properly, filling forms out, make sure everything's done, things don't get forgotten about, or issues not taken care of. So this office is a lot more important than people think it is. So
I personally think the office ought to be open as much as you can.
I've had somebody complain about where it's always shut up there too. Won't know why the door's always shut there.
I've had a complaint also about it.
The biggest complaint I had when I was in that office was that the office wasn't open all day, every day, and you can't be in the office and out here doing inspections. I mean, that's why it hasn't been a one-man job for a long time. But I didn't realize that we had the office shut, period.
Yeah.
I thought we were still open in the mornings and that this would help with opening in the afternoons. But, question today is, where do we want this to go? Do we want the Code and Zoning Committee's recommendation on this? Do we need, I know we'll need budget and finance on it. I don't know, does this get into personnel issues because of the pay rate, pay scale and whatnot? I wouldn't think it would. You're not really creating a new position per se for the county, because you have this position in other offices. So it would just be in this office. So I don't see that it needs to go to personnel, but we can deal with it. What we're trying to decide is where it needs to go tonight, first of all.
Did we not approve for you to have an assistant at one time? I thought we did. I thought maybe we even budgeted it.
No. No, I asked for one, and I was told we were gonna get one. And the night that it came up for vote, I believe Mr. Ford made the speech to not do it, and it didn't happen.
Long time of year.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what happened.
Going into the winter, and I didn't think you needed it.
But, so no, it's not. Now, in the last 2 years' budget, there was a part-time position in there if I needed to help Sam with training for that first year. And none of that money was spent because he didn't need me for anything. And so, yes, the money has been in the budget in times past and not used. It's not in this budget.
I'm gonna make a motion, we send it to Budget and Finance for approval.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? Does it need to go anywhere else? Okay. Have a motion to send it to Budget and Finance in a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll take it up this month in Budget and Finance with the other budget amendments. Thank you, Sam.
And you need a motion on these others up here? Approval from the budget, from the steering committee.
Probably all of the other budget amendments go to Budget and Finance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next month, in September, that is this month, I guess now, sorry, we'll have elections for the commission chairman and pro temp. So we'll have that on our agenda for September. Be thinking about if you'd like to hold those positions. We'll have appointments. Hopefully, we'll have another name for judicial commissioner. Last month, we did approve or to appoint Lonnie Taylor. Mr. Taylor, once it was offered to him, officially declined it, is my understanding. So they're back to square one on that one. We do not have a name yet from Judge Linville. I know he's talked to several people and still trying to talk to some folks about that. Board of Equalization, Mayor, that's because Mr. Potts was on the Board of Equalization.
Well, we actually have two. One of them, Linda King was on, and she resigned earlier this year, and at that time, it was so close to doing the equalization hearings, Mr. Byrd asked me to wait until we got closer to after the results of the election and see how things came out. He has suggested Linda Carey, and Mike Potts has agreed with that, so one appointment name we're gonna put forward is Linda Carey. And Mr. Potts is still speaking to other people, see if he can get another nominee. He's pretty confident he'll have one by the time the commission meets later this month for appointment. And we have another appointment we need to add to this, and this will be to the Industrial Development Board. Glenn Haynes has resigned from the Industrial Development Board, and his nominee to replace him is going to be Seth Thurman. Mr. Haynes was on there as a representative of Wilson Bank and Trust. The board in the past had tried to have a representative from both banks. This left one bank without a representative, and so they've not named Seth Thurman as a nominee.
Any questions about that? We do have in the 4th district vacancy, there were 2 people that picked up petitions and are qualified and will be on the ballot on the November 3rd special election for that. That is Lonnie Taylor and
Clyde Mansfield.
Clyde Mansfield. I believe Clyde was a former commissioner. So that's the 2 that the voters will decide on in a couple of months. We have on here a resolution from the Highway Department, Hickory Ridge Lane and Acorn Lane. Is that to, I don't know, is that to add them to the road name list, or?
I believe it's added to the main list.
Okay. I think it's actually to extend those, it's just making them longer, is my understanding on it, but we'll have that in the resolution form. Okay. Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Mayor, could you tell us how what your thoughts are going forward with replacing or repairing the windows in the courthouse and how that will move forward?
Also, I have actually several items I'm going to go over for the other discussion, things that have come up very recently and was not in time to get on the
And that
the
might have
agenda.
been one of them.
Yeah.
Well, this one, I did have a Zoom meeting with Tanya Blades from the Greater National Regional Council, and she's our historic preservation specialist, and we discussed the issues at the courthouse. The Department of Interior, who kind of oversees the National Register of Historic Places, recommends that you maintain the windows that are in the building before you replace them. If you take them out, it could have, issues of being placed on the list. The courthouse is part of a National Register of Historic Places district that was granted in 1995, and it is one of the main contributing buildings, given that it was built in 1905, and it is a center place of the community. So she recommended, and Holly Barnett from the Tennessee Historical Commission also very strongly recommended, that we have a historical structure report done of the building to see what the issues are with the building, not just the windows, but basically everything top to bottom, to see what all needs to be done. And she then suggested that we use that to apply for preservation grants. There are preservation grants from the state that will open up in January, and those can be between $30,000 to $35,000, and there are other preservation grants out there that'll be more money. And both of them suggested that we have that historical structure report done. That will require us to issue a request for a proposal to do that on the building. What that amount's going to be, I don't know. They did send me some documentation on putting together an RFP for a historical structure report. Most of the ones that are done in other states and everything, this RFP is going to have to be about 18 pages long. So there's a lot of I's you got to dot, T's you got to cross when you're dealing with historic structure, especially one on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's something I'm going to ask that the Budget and Finance, since the issue that was sent to Budget and Finance was just replacement of the windows, I'm going to ask Budget and Finance to send that back to the Building Committee to, let's get the RFP in place and see what that amount's going to be to do the historical structure report, and then send it back to Budget and Finance when we actually have an amount to go with doing that report.
Thank you.
And I will say, if this report comes back saying that the windows need to be replaced, well, then that will give us support to replace the windows because the federal government can look at it and say, we don't want you to replace the windows, but if we got this report saying they came out, they looked at the windows, they're beyond repair, so we gotta replace them, and that'll give us support when we do that.
I do know that the windows that we were looking at, what we were quoted on, were approved for historical structures by the National Historical Committee. That's one reason these windows cost so much. But, you know, we may be getting the cart before the horse by going ahead and doing those windows without the study. Of course, this study is going to cost us money, and it's going to take more time, but if that's the direction we need to take, we had tried to make sure that what we were doing was up to historical commission standards, and we were assured by our county historian that it was, and that it wasn't on the register, and it wasn't a problem, and since it was a building that was currently being used, that it shouldn't be. The people with the window company assured us that these windows had historical approval. As long as you did them, when you walk by and they look like what's in there, basically, it's okay. You can't come in there and block off the top of that round top window. You gotta go back with a round top window that looks like what's there. And that was the direction we were going with it. I think if we go that direction, there'd never be any problem with it. But I do understand what the mayor's saying, where he's coming from. I think it's just one of those necessary evils, and we'll have to deal with it. But I'm anxious to see what this study is going to cost, and even who's going to do it. And I think it's going to really get into a lot of stuff that we didn't anticipate, quite frankly. Budget and finance right now, we have nothing to deal with. We've asked the mayor to do an RFP. He says we can't do an RFP without this study, so we'll have to go that direction. Any further thoughts on that?
Like you got a choice.
Doesn't look that way.
No.
Not now.
Historical Society got a lot of, much more clout, especially when you get into the federal now.
Well, I know that when this was done, I remember the discussion in the historical district, and specifically questions like this coming up. Is this going to keep? We're going to have to get somebody else's approval, or we do something to our building? Oh, no, it's just the area. So, you know, sometimes what's said in good faith is not the way things can work out to be. And I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody, I just feel like that's the situation we find ourselves. But that's the direction we need to go. We've got to do something to the windows.
Yeah, we've got to do something.
If it, you know, if we want to spend $100,000 scraping them and putting bubbles over them to take the lead paint that they're going to find on them, and go that direction to reputty them, that's the direction I guess we'll have to take. That was one reason we were trying to avoid all that by simply replace them with historically accurate windows. But anyway, that's where we're at, so that's what we'll do. Unless somebody has a different idea. Okay, next.
Next, I'm going to bring forth, and I obviously don't have anything on this, we'll have to go on to RFQ to hire retain an engineering firm to come up with a plan to replacing the sidewalks. Right now, some of them are, as I've said before, they're beyond crumbling, they crumble. And then we're also going to have to meet the new ADA requirements, and there's T-Dot specifications for how to build a sidewalk. And so right now, I'm going to strongly suggest we look at retaining an engineering firm to do that, to design those new sidewalks and make sure we're meeting stormwater, drain off and ADA requirements and everything. I'm not saying we come in and replace them all in one whack, but we certainly need to look at the sidewalks around Total Image. Those are actually the worst in the county, and they're some of the ones that have crumbled, not crumbling. And then there are some other areas we need to look at specifically, any areas where would be a crosswalk or something. We need to make sure that meets ADA requirements. So again, on this process, you'll have to issue an RFQ, which means there won't be an actual dollar amount put on it. You're actually getting a statement of qualifications and picking the most qualified firm, and then working with them, seeing what that amount's going to be. as to what they're gonna charge you to do this engineering work. So I'm gonna suggest we start looking in that direction. I've been trying to find an RFQ to really do this. I haven't found much online. Most of what I'm finding is not really on point with this. I'm gonna have to reach out to some other counties or cities and kind of see if I can get them to give me something to build this around. But I do think we certainly need to be looking in that direction. And also the gravel lot beside Donahoe, Taylor and Taylor, that is owned by the county. I've talked to Mr. Scruggs about coming in and paving that. There is a water drain off issue there, and also behind that building where there's actually a driveway going from that gravel lot behind Donahoe, Taylor and Taylor, and there's already a pretty significant drop if you come in there and pave that. Well, now you've got, feet of drop there, and so that's going to need to be engineered along with, like I said, the stormwater. You might have to come in and probably put a drain or something right in the middle and cut a ditch to run another pipe in that and connect it down to the existing storm drain system. So both of those projects looking going forward, I'm going to recommend that we look at retaining engineering, whether it's one engineering firm, we say it's going to do the sidewalks and the parking, or if we separate them out. I just want to bring it to you and let you know that this is something we're looking at, and the planning commission has been very interested in moving some of these projects forward.
And this is professional selections committee will meet on that engineer.
They don't have to, because the ordinance that was passed where the county says if there's a grant involved, the professional service selection can meet. We're still going to go through some of that process. We're still going to use that. It might be a different committee. We can assemble a different membership if we want to look at it. Because right now, the planning commission, the professional services committee doesn't have a representative from the planning commission. So when we do this, we may get one person from planning and then look at, structuring it a different way. But it will actually be a different planning professional services, because that's for grants. And this will just be probably using some of the grant money, not grant money, but some of the funding we got from the governor this year for the COVID. It was originally going to be COVID response. Now they just made it a funding source to the county.
So you're just gonna go ahead with the RFQ on that and
We're going to go ahead with the RFQ on that. And like I said, it's not going to be major projects right off the bat. Probably the first one I'm going to propose we do is just on both sides of Total Image, where that is, again, it's crumbled. There's a complete section where there's not a sidewalk there. It's just gravel now.
Any questions? What else?
Let's see here. I've covered the courthouse damage. And as I said, I think Mr. Clarity had a question, something about insurance company that didn't get asked.
The water department furnish insurance on leaks?
Well, they furnish insurance on leaks, but it's only if you have damage to a line. This was not the main line coming into the building. This was a line that had been, I guess it furnished sinks or something in the past. It was capped off and put behind the wall, but that insurance is a different insurance than what it is for inside the building. That only goes line coming into your building. Am I correct on that?
Don't they also have the inside the building insurance?
No.
It just goes to the foundation of the house.
Just stops at the foundation?
Yeah, so this is actually going through our Tennessee Risk Management Trust, which insures all our buildings. So since it's inside the building, it's a different method we have to go through.
And it pays well, because I seen the claim come in today, they paid nearly $10,000 to one man that had almost a mile of line.
Yeah, I knew they paid up to $10,000.
One time a year. So they do pay off what they do what they say they do. They do pay the claim.
I'm going to ask, I've been talking to Mr. Beller, we gotta get the final notice drafted to have a meeting for the committee to resell land and put out a notice to sell some of the properties we've gotten in past tax sales that we haven't sold in quite a while. I think one piece of property we're not gonna be able to do this time because we can't find any deed showing how we got it. We actually had since the 1950s. So we're actually gonna submit that. This will include properties all the way up to the April of 2019 tax sale that we got. So we're gonna try to get rid of everything we've got, except for, like I said, that one property that we can't show how we got it.
Where's it?
That is on Breeze End Lane, or is it Breeze End Drive? I can't remember exactly what it is. And actually, there's probably two parcels we own out there. One of them, if you don't sell them together, the other one's pretty much worthless, because you don't have enough land to do anything. So we're kind of stuck. One of them is parcel number 5, and then it's parcel number 6. Parcel number 6, we've got the documentation. We can show how we got it. Parcel number 5, We don't have a deed for that. The deed that's referenced in the code, or excuse me, is referenced in the tax record is a deed between two brothers, not the county. And we can't find anything after that to show how the county got it.
Which end the breeze in, is it no?
It's, if you're heading south, the first entrance on the breeze in, you turn right there, you're gonna turn right on the breeze in, and when you get to the first curve, it'll go back to your left. There's two parcels that's right, almost right before you enter that curve. If you're driving, you're gonna see a house, and then a gap of land, and then another house. It's that gap, those two parcels of that gap of land.
That's good.
Another thing I've talked to Mr. Beller about is going through and trying to update all the codes in the municipal code, and there are some sections we're just gonna have to remove. And also, this falls in line with a request from the water board. There is a section in the, well, it's the formal town of Hartsville code, and of course, it went into effect when it went metro. It's Title 18 of our ordinances that has exactly how the water department and everything's supposed to operate. However, the water board has been passing policies that some of them conflict with that ordinances that have been passed in, actually it was from someone from 1975, they've all been done mainly before it went metro. And so I've talked to Mr. Beller about that, and he says that's gonna be one of those issues that's gonna take quite a while to get through, but we're gonna start working on that to try to see how does that need to be done, since the water board has been set up to kind of be this semi-quasi-independent body. How's that gonna work with these ordinances over here? Do we need to repeal that and just say that their policies control, but there's a lot of issues that are in those ordinances that are not addressed in the policy. So there's a lot of legality there we're gonna have to work through to try to see how we're gonna come and recommend what to do with that. And that's gonna have to require us working with the water board and the county commission and the county attorney to see what path we're gonna have to take on that. But we're at the very, very, very beginning of that process. The water board just looked at it and made the recommendation to have us come to the county commission and explain that and start looking at that process. Was last week, I believe it was?
Yes.
So that's gonna be.
The issue, in a nutshell, a lot of it says Hartsville, the city of Hartsville or Hartsville. So, but your water department doesn't just operate in the city of Hartsville. So you're gonna have one set of rules for in Hartsville and one set of rules out in the county, and trying to get everything the same and treat people fairly. It either probably is gonna have to change the terminology of Hartsville to Trousdale County, or the service department of that utility district. And that's where this whole discussion came up, is you have no legal authority to, other than in the city of Hartsville, to enforce these things. Somebody's outside the Hartsville Urban Services District, you have no authority to do anything, because it's all written for Hartsville. So that's what brought it up, and that's why it's important, is to identify mainly the service area and who's responsible and where that responsibility comes from.
I think it's gonna go deeper than that, because they haven't
It's a
been
lot
updated.
deeper than that.
They haven't been updated since 1975.
That's what I'm saying, but that's what originated it. That's what started this dialogue.
So yeah, that's gonna be quite a lengthy process, but like I said, we're just at the very beginning of it. I just want to go ahead and fulfill the direction of the water board, and let the commission know that this is something that's gonna be coming down the pipe.
Mr. Ford?
Mayor's any update on the homeless situation?
She's currently a resident of the Trousdale County Jail. She was supposed to be out by today. That was what the injunction we got. We went a civil route. That gives us a little bit more leeway than if you were done it criminally. That brings you under the 8th Amendment. We still try to maintain what we would have been required to do, even if we hadn't done it through criminal. So we met the requirements of the 8th Amendment for cruel and unusual punishment. We got a civil injunction against her. Any judgment that's civil from the General Sessions Court is not final within 10 days after it's given, because you have 10 days to appeal at the circuit court. She did not appeal it. Today was the 11th day after the court date, so she was told if she's still there after that, she's going to jail. If she comes back anytime after that, she's going to jail for 10 days. So she's doing a 10-day stint right now. She goes back, she'll do another 10. I have a meeting tomorrow with a group that's interested in trying to put together an initiative to help the homes here, so maybe we'll be able to help her through that. But in the past, I've offered her help, other people offered her help, and she won't take it, and she doesn't meet so far the requirements of a 604 involuntary committal because she hasn't proven to be a danger to herself or anyone else. So you can't make her go.
What about her things that are still there?
We're putting over storing those for 30 days. She's going to be receiving a letter from my office tomorrow, letting her know where they are, how she can claim her belongings. If she does not claim them within 30 days, they will go in the trash. And that is following the guidance set out by the county attorney.
Any questions?
It's still, I stayed some stuff up there when I come from them.
Well, they'll be cleaning it out tomorrow. She just went to jail today, so they'll be cleaning it out tomorrow. The trash that's there is going to be thrown away. Any personal belongings will be stored by the county for 30 days. At the end of that 30 days, if she hasn't claimed her belongings, they're going to be thrown away.
Thank you for all your work on that.
I have one more issue. The clerk and master's office brought to my attention the county has not actually paid for any property it's gotten in a tax sale since at least 2003. And there's $17,000 plus that's due in clerk fees, sheriff fees, and attorney's fees. We're currently trying to get an answer from the comptroller's office about how we need to address this. We're at least going to have to pay those fees to the sheriff's department, clerk's office, and attorneys. We're trying to see if we have to actually transfer the entire amount that's due, which is going to be over $100,000 on those properties. It'll basically be just moving from, it's just moving around in a county. It's not real, the county doesn't lose the money, you're basically paying it yourself. But we need to know for accounting purposes, do we still need to show that transfer in our books? They sent us back an answer that was not really on point with what we were asking. We were asking if we had to transfer the money to ourselves. And they sent us an answer back saying, well, here's how you take care of state liens. Well, there are no state liens. We're just trying to see how we got to do it to make sure we're meeting accounting standards. So we're still working to get an answer to that. But at least we're going to have to, I would strongly recommend that we make sure the people have done the work and get paid for it. That's going to be, I think, $17,300 something dollars.
Anything else?
That's it.
I like one thing, I know all of you get the CCSA little paper as commissioner. If you notice, there was an article in there about 8 counties that had clean audits, and we weren't one of them. I just wanted to explain that because there would have been questioned by a commissioner about that. We had a clean audit in the mayor's office, the county, the Board of Education, but because of one finding in the water department is why we didn't have a complete clean audit. And even that, we did what they told us to do. They just decided that wasn't the way to do it. So, so hopefully, anybody, if you was wondering why we didn't show up on that list, that's the why we didn't show up on that list. And I know all the departments have worked really hard, the mayor's worked really hard to get us to that point, and we weren't able to do that. Another little note on TCSA, we did have a conference call, the board, and we are not going to have any meetings this year. We are not going to elect new officers. The officers that are in place will carry over to next year. So, just in case you're wondering about that, what will happen with that, that's where we're at with that. Anybody have anything else? Mr. King?
Is it my time?
It's your turn if you want to speak.
Several points. One to bring, just for your information, FYI, and I brought this to the mayor's attention the other night when you guys were discussing the possibility that you may have to refurbish or repair the existing windows. I formerly owned a window tinting business for many years in Mount Juliet, and just for your information, it's something you might want to consider if you have to refurbish them. They make clear, transparent, totally transparent films that if you have to refurbish those windows, it can be applied that will block 100% of UV rays, and it'll have a very, very high, like a 43% rejection of heat. Now, the immediate gratification of having that is the cost savings of not being able to put the new double pane low E windows in there. So you'll have some utility savings, and then the long-term gratification of that is the putty and glaze, that if they have to redo it, will not falter under the UV rays, because that's what kills it as it comes inside the glass, on those panes and the woods and the pews and everything else that the sun just tears down. It's an unbelievable difference in the glare inside and the heat when you're sitting up there. And I know we've all sat up there in afternoon sessions, and when that sun's setting, it's a little bit brutal. I had a fairly small house in 1,100 to 1,500 square feet, and only one pretty good window, 7 or 8 foot wide window, faced the morning sun, and my electric bill went down $50 a month just tinting that one window. So, and your carpets don't get paid. Anyway, something to consider, that if you guys do budget to repair those, you might consider getting some estimates on that. Next thing is for Tommy on the fire hydrants. I know you guys have probably discussed this, and you've got so many that you're trying to keep up with, but moving forward, have you guys established any sort of protocol or schedule for regular testing so it's not such an overwhelming task for you in the future?
And next year, we won't try to get them all done as fast as we've done this.
You're playing
We'll do
catch up.
them on a month, we'll break them down over like a 6-month period and break them down where we can manage them easier. And do it that way. And the board has mandated that they be done annually. So it is a requirement for me to have to do them annually because the board said that's what they want.
So it's essentially every single hydrant in the system will be checked once a year?
The ones in town are doing that. Now I've got to do an assessment of, most of the ones that are in the rural areas won't meet a flow requirement to flow for 5, they probably won't ever get over 500 gallons. But we can check them. We're going to get a list of those next and quantify them, make sure they're functioning. And that's on the list to do next.
Excellent.
A lot of what we call a fire hydrant in the county is not a fire hydrant. It's a hydrant. It is to drain lines, to burp air, to flush, and but they're not designed or have the flow capacity for fire hydrants. And they'll be painted to reflect that.
Roughly how many are in the county like that, outside the city limits?
I don't know exact count. We're going to know that soon.
Because a lot of it, that's shared with another water district as well, so it's not just our water district.
And I think you may have answered my question before I got it out. If you identified or cited in on a potential employee for your assistant, and how much training will be involved for somebody that's going to make $13 an hour, because I understand that's a pretty healthy job for somebody to do.
So I'm not requiring training up front. Most of it's going to be in-office training, like me showing them the steps, reading the ordinances, understanding the ordinance and stuff like that. But I've had 5, 6 people that I've got on a list that have already called me asking about it, not knowing about this. They called me months ago saying, if you ever do get one, call me. So there are people waiting, but those people that are waiting are more looking for a full-time position in the office because they either did it in another county, or I even have one from Florida that moved to Tennessee that was a codes inspector down there that wants to come here and do codes enforcement. But with this job, they probably wouldn't be interested in it. I do have a lot of people that have mentioned that if I do have something open up, I'll let them know.
Well, I hope that helps you. I know you're very overloaded, and I think this will be a big help for you and the county, but I bet you're going to see that your availability will generate more funds than it will cost for your assistant.
I'm trying to, I really hope when I get this person in there, the main thing is knock out. I've got a substantial list of people that have submitted complaints. And those people I want to take care of first, because, I mean, it goes in a line when you submit a complaint, I just put them in order. So, with this person in there, I'll be able to go through those and hopefully get some of the issues around the county that people have been asking to fix fixed. So,
Very good.
Commissioners, anyone have anything else? Mayor, do you have anything further?
No. Make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
And a second? Motion by Mr. Gregory, second by Mr. Ford, all in favor, vote please.
Didn't mean,